All right. Welcome. Happy Friday, everybody. This is Two Lock Sports. I'm joined here by Thunder Dan. We're going to go and break down today's NBA slate. This is a good one. We got a big slate. We got a whole lot of chalk. We got a lot of injury news. If you guys haven't yet, make sure you head on over to DraftManager and check us out. We've got Dan's article today, which we'll go through in detail, is actually free. Give you guys a little bit of insight into how we break down the slates, what you can expect from joining our team. We've got our early bird pricing up. We also have our early bird rest of season pricing up, which we're going to put out later today, which is a huge deal. It's an incredible bargain. If you guys have already been as part of this team, I highly recommend locking it in because it's about as cheap as we could possibly imagine. And you're going to get the most bang for your buck, I would argue, of any DFS site in the industry. So let's jump right in. Dan's going to kick us off, give a little bit of overview on this slate from his perspective. We'll kind of walk you through some of our tools and how we're using them, just to give you guys, a little bit more than just the articles we give you each day, and a little bit more personal insight like we give, the members each day in Slack. So go ahead, Dan.
For sure. Thanks, Brian. Just check on the one screen share there. I feel like it's not. Just see if
it shows projecting. Oh, hold on.
There we go. All right, cool. Just want to make sure they can see what I'm seeing. Yeah, I mean, I was happy to do my article for free today. Kind of give everybody a idea of what we got going on over there. I mean, I think we are a tremendous value in the industry, and I know the members who have joined right now really feel the same way and feel like they're getting a high level of analysis and a ton of really good content on a daily basis that there's helping them become better players. So I focused on my article today about just the fact that we're looking at some very heavy potential chalk in the Toronto game. And, the fact of the matter is, even on a big slate, you're going to have to eat some of that chalk. I always have a core four in my article, and today was tough because it's very tempting to just play like four Raptors, and I just don't think that's very helpful to just say here's your core four, like four Raptors, because that's not, that's probably not going to end up being the optimal.
Would have taken you a lot less time to write that.
Right, of course. I mean, so what I ended up doing was going with two Raptors in my core, Serge Ibaka. I'm just going to lock him into the optimizer right now. And the other guy being OG. Let's just call him OG. I don't want to patch his name.
It's easier.
Right? So these guys are fairly priced, 5'6" and 7'4". I mean, that's a lot for Ibaka at first glance until you realize the massive amount of minutes he's going to play. We have him projected here for 43 DK points. I feel like 35 to 40 is a floor, and he's really got a ceiling of 50 probably or more.
Is there any issue with that game? I was thinking about this more before. Is there any worry with that game that it goes small? Where Ibaka gets a little bit run off the floor and they go with RHJ and those kind of guys a little bit more?
I think to some degree there is that worry. I think that's what makes me hesitant more on Pure a little bit. That I kind of favor RHJ for that reason, but I still think Ibaka is going to play center. Even in their small ball lineups, I just can't imagine they go RHJ at center. I mean, he played. What did he play? 35 minutes last game after Gasol got hurt. And I know it was against a bigger team, but I mean, Ibaka's not even a true center. I do think the way that Nurse plays the starters a ton of minutes that play 5 minutes. And so I think he's a really great play tonight, and I don't want to overthink too much. I put in my article today his per 36 stats this season is 20 and 12. With a couple blocks. So if we can expect a 20-10 game somewhere in that range, I think he's a great cash play, and I want to play him a lot in tournaments too. So my other two were Andre Drummond, who actually comes in at the top of our projections here. For raw points, the news coming in that Bernard's out, as well as and Christian Wood. I mean, he's in a just amazing spot here against Boston. We saw Porzingis get 14 rebounds against them, and Drummond is, a beast from boards. He's had a number of good games against Boston. I think he's great play tonight in all formats. Center's pretty loaded.
It is.
Jokic right at the top. We got Vucevic, we got Whiteside, all these guys, but I don't know how you pass on Drummond at that opportunity per minute. And whereas you feel about Drummond?
It's interesting, man. Drummond, when I started writing it up today, I see some of the comments in the chat. You're going in and out a little bit, Dan. So when you do that, I'll try and jump in just to help. I mean, I heard exactly what you're saying, but it was a little choppy with the Drummond stuff. But anyway, when I was looking this morning, Drummond was kind of that guy I felt like was the one stud that you really could end up wanting to pay for. Obviously the matchup with Boston is one. I don't see how Tice or Cantor is going to even slow him down. I do think, however, the more that I look at this, we talked about this. I forget. The slates start to blend into each other, but we talked about this the other day, where it's like the new news tends to get people to react more so than when guys are just good players, but there's no new news or any real reason to think about them that day.
Sure.
And the Drummond, I think, is that example tonight, right? Like Blake being out is the news, and now everyone just kind of goes right to Drummond. And you made the point, like, look at the other centers. I mean, you don't have to go far. I mean, you look at the projections, it's like Embiid and Jokic are right on his tail. And I personally wrote him up today. I think Joker might be my favorite play now on the slate, because I think, if you look at him, the price is basically right around the same as Drummond's.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the last 3 games, it's been kind of quiet. He's almost averaging a triple-double the last 3, and he's got like 50, 60. And I mean, honestly, you and I do this every day. We dig into this, and I feel like I was not aware that he was on that until I really clicked and started looking.
Sure. Especially when he was so lousy for a long stretch of not lousy, but just mediocre for a long stretch. I think people kind of fell asleep on him, and he's been great the last 2 weeks. Yeah,
I think the more I look at it, where before I was kind of ready to lock in Drummond as like that core guy, it's feeling now like I don't know. I'm just reading the tea leaves on it and thinking, does everybody go there because Blake's out and Kennard's out and Wood's out? And it's like now everyone just thinks, all right, I'll react to that because he's underpriced. When I could argue that, Joker and Embiid have every bit the same upside, but because, none of the Sixers guys are sitting or, there's nothing like that. It's like those guys won't get a fraction of the ownership.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I wrote both those guys up as pivots at center here today, and I have Embiid a little bit ahead of Joker, only because I really like the matchup for Embiid against Dallas. That's really undersized also. And Embiid himself has been on a tear ever since he got called out by Shaq being lazy or whatever, like 3 games ago. Wasn't it Shaq and Charles that called him?
Yeah.
They kind of questioned how tough he was, and then he went out and just dropped 70 on the Celtics. When he's motivated, dude, he balls out, and so I like him.
He actually is even more so of a pivot in the sense that, you're showing the DraftKings pricing; it's mirrored on Fantasy Draft. He's pricier than Drummond and Jokic, so for that reason alone, he's going to be super low owned. Because nobody on Philly's out. But this is where I think, to your point where you talked before about, some spots you just eat the chalk and you move on, right? And, this is a spot where you could end up building a couple of those Toronto pieces in, but instead of going for Drummond, you pivot to Embiid or Joker at a fraction of the ownership. And if those guys outscore Drummond by a couple points, that leverage just vaults you, right over the field.
Right, and if something happens with Drummond, obviously he gets in foul trouble or underperforms, and he only goes 5x or something, and then Embiid and these guys go 6 or 7x. It's huge. It's what you need. We've talked about leverage all the time, and so for cash games, I know you're not a cash game player, but for cash games, you play Drummond, you follow the ownership, you follow the projection here. For tournament pivots, I 100% endorse going with Embiid or Jokic or on like a site like DK or Fantasy Draft, you play 2 or 3 centers. Like I love playing 2 centers on DK. I know you sometimes like to go double or triple center on Fantasy Draft. Like
5.
Unique build.
Yeah, you can go 5 on there if you're on Fantasy.
Go 5. I mean, you could play. I don't know if you'll find the value of guards that you want or you're looking for. I guess maybe there's some Galloway and guys like that. But
yeah,
I mean, I'll probably play on Fantasy Draft just tonight because I can play 5 centers, and you guys know I'm fairly obsessed with big men. So let me just keep going with this core 4 idea here. So if we just lock these 4 guys and just let's say generate 10 lineups, all right, we're gonna get. My guess is probably a lot of Galloway. Yep, an RHJ, some Boucher in here, and then we see popping up guys like projected John Morant, who our projections are really high on tonight, who I wrote up, hasn't really had a ceiling game recently, but has been consistently like in high 30s and DK points. Cleveland is like a team you can totally target with guards. They're terrible defense. And so like Morant like going to be a super sneaky, like all these guards. I'm kind of off Kyle Lowry but I'm hoping that Van Fleet plays and kind of dings Lowry a little bit because I really want to play guys like Morant. Probably see if we can get one down here to show us that like there's some exposure to Golden State with Robinson, but I really love from that game. Of course, I know you're going to talk about game stacks. D'Angelo Russell.
Yep.
There's a lot of really good guards on the slate who get overlooked for Lowry, and maybe Kemba becomes chalky now. I put Kemba in my court today because no Gordon Hayward. He's been on a roll. Detroit's a good matchup. He and Jalen correlate well together, and they've both been playing really well. And plus he correlates with Drummond play. I mean, I think that game stays close.
Yep.
And you want Drum to go 20-20, then Kemba's going to have 30 points, 5 assists on their side. And so I just wanted to show everybody. I mean, obviously, you can manipulate your percentages here. We don't have to get into the whole tutorial here, but our optimizer is great at being able to, lock in a core, 2 or 3 or 4 guys, and then set up specifications around it that you really want, the conditions you want to create to make lineups unique.
It's interesting. I was just looking at last slate when the Kemba was on, when Smart and Hayward got ruled out. I'm just looking back at that slate. He was 72% owned in the $25 pick and roll on Fantasy Draft. I mean, I know, and now it doesn't always correlate perfectly to every other thing, and I just but I mean, it's interesting because to your point, you could end up like if you think the Kemba, Drummond, and then a couple Toronto pieces, you could be looking at like massive, crazy chalk for those guys. So and going back to what we were talking about before, if Kemba's the guard you want, he becomes kind of the pivot off of Lowry in a sense. So if you're not going to go that route, where do you pivot? So maybe it is Drummond, and you move off of him as a way to get off of, or you find, listen, you've got other roster spots, right? So like to your point, what you've got up on the screen, I mean, Morant could be that low owned guy that drops 40 or 50 at, if, single digit ownership, and that's how you vault over the rest of the field.
Right. I think one of the things we've been saying, and like to our subs and to everybody, is just you don't have to fade all the chalk, especially when it's good chalk. I mean, this Toronto chalk's they're innate. They're one of the best matchups on the slate. Huge pace up, worst defense in the league. The likelihood of them not hitting their floors is almost none, and the likelihood of a couple of them hitting their ceiling is very high. So it comes pieces like how do you want to mix and match them? How do you correlate them? Because I wrote all about correlations in my article today, and like Lowry and Baca have like a 0.3 correlation, so they're pretty high. How do you leverage that information? Do you think, hey, maybe they get bench guys get more run, and you just play the value like Boucher and the more expensive guys? I mean, honestly, there's a number of different ways to go about it, but like you said, you can't get away from some of this chalk, whether it's Drummond chalk, whether it's Toronto chalk. You just got to get some of it and definitely elsewhere. And there's so many other spots to with,
So I think so. Maybe I'm gonna flip over onto
Yeah, go ahead.
because I want to show. I previewed this a little bit today in the article. Now, obviously, Dan had his on DraftKings. I'm on Fantasy Draft here, but I wanted to show you guys because I talked a little bit about this today in the sense that if you just look at this slate, I think you can make the argument of having your core just sit in Washington and Toronto, and then also as we were talking about with Detroit and with Boston. And so one of the things that I did today, and I did a snapshot of this in my article, but I want to show you guys kind of live how to do it because I think it's one of the most underutilized parts of the optimizer. It's something that I've become a huge fan of using because I think it just, especially on slates like this, you've got 10 games, 20 teams, trying to eliminate the noise and trying to focus your build. So if you're in the optimizer right from the start, you click on the game filter, right? Deselect all of them so that you don't have any players in your pool. And now just go in here and you start picking, right? So we're just going to take Washington, Toronto, Detroit, and Boston. Now, the one thing for you guys, if you don't play on Fantasy Draft, it is important to know you'd have to select at least a minimum of 3 teams. The way Fantasy Draft's roster, although it's incredibly flexible in terms of having 3 guards, 3 forward centers, and then 2 utility. So it's the most flexible build, but the one restriction is you have to have a minimum of 3 teams. So just keep that in mind when you're doing this. But if you pick these 2 games alone, right? And again, you take 10 lineups just so you can get an idea of the algorithm and what it's looking at. If you hit generate lineups, you're going to see a lot of the same guys we've been talking about, right? But this is telling you 100% Kemba, 100% Lowry, 100% Surge, and 100% Drummond. Now you start mixing and matching in the value like you talked about. Galloway, Boucher and Hollis Jefferson, OG. I mean, look at the line. I mean, not that we even I literally just hit the button, right? But you look at these projections, 315, 315. I mean, and this is just those 2 games. And I mean, from a scoring perspective on Fantasy Draft, usually it's about 300 is usually the minimum cash line. Around 350 is more of the GPP, like winning scores. It doesn't always work that way. But, if you think about this has to make you feel pretty good about where the projections are coming in. And, I think I could argue realistically that, if you're saying that, maybe the guys like Beal or Drummond and Lowry, I mean, and Kemba, you could argue all 4 of those guys have 50 plus, point upside, 60 plus in Drummond's case. These, you can see a path where this is a really strong cash game build, I would think.
Yeah.
And I think it has GPP appeal for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing about a lot of those plays that are highly correlated, you're keeping with 2 games that I know I'm always going to case about game stacking and stuff, but one of the things you do when you do that is make sure that if that game does in fact, track like you expect it to and it stays close and guys who are going to have production get the production, then you elevate that whole lineup's floor and ceiling it collectively.
Absolutely.
I'm guilty of going around and hunting these. And I know kind of similar to baseball, like you're hunting home runs if you play a bunch of one-offs and stuff. But I mean, I'm guilty of like, oh man, I love D'Angelo Russell, and I'm gonna like make the perfect lineup with every upside piece. And then sure enough, one of those guys doesn't go off, or that game sucks or whatever. And so it cuts both ways. Like you have a really solid group of production there of guys who are going to likely produce betting. So maybe what I would add, a little wrinkle would be like doing that and then seeing where you slot in a really good one-off play, like targeting those games, and then where can I get different with one D'Angelo Russell here, one Johnson there, and trying to find that piece. Jamal Murray, I wrote up today. Like, I don't know what his price is over there, but someone who is going to be low owned and is going to go off that fits into your 2v2 build.
Yeah, so like if you go back in here, it's really easy to do, right? I mean, you're kind of just it's always helpful, I think, to show people how to do this. So let's just say, for example, like you were talking about Jamal Murray, right? So if I go in here, find him, hit the lock button on him, right? Now you go back up top, deselect, the games you don't want, just go back and run this. So Jamal Murray, you'll see here, is the only player we've got locked, but now you're using your one-off play. You know, it's giving you Jamal Murray with 4 Raptors, which is not super shocking, with Rose, Drummond, and Kemba. I mean, again, like, can you really argue with that? And that's an even better projection.
Yeah, man. I mean, Rose and Drummond from that and Kemba from the same game, all correlated together. The 4 Raptors and those floors and those ceilings, and then if Jamal Murray's your guy tonight, you want to roll with him, like. I don't know if he is. I kept him in GPP today because, they never know with Nuggets and rotations. But and he's the perfect complement to Joker, too. They correlate really well. And they're like a nice 2-man Nuggets stack. But, man, that's awesome. Like, I personally have to get in there and do that more. I spend a lot of time creating content, and I'm all across different sites and stuff. And I honestly need to devote more time to our own tools because –
it's funny, though. I mean, I think part of it is just the way you and I approach slates differently. Right. You and I think it's why, people in Slack see it and it's funny, right? Because we'll go back and forth with each other. Sure. I look at a 10-game slate and like my mindset is as a GPP player, I want to ignore 90% of the slate and focus in on the 10% that I really like.
Right.
Versus, as you were saying, like, yeah, sure. Like, as a one-off play, maybe, Jimmy Butler is in a great spot against the Knicks, but sure. I'm not interested in trying to find the one guy.
Right.
Now, what I do like on fantasy draft, and you just mentioned it, is like you lock in the one guy you love and then you game stack 2 teams around it. I do that a lot. I did that last night with the Lakers and the Bucks, and I used what's his face, that Bruno dude from the Hawks, my one punt, and it worked. I mean, it was an easy cash line, stacking up that game and putting the studs together, and I like doing that because to your point, it correlates well. I think tonight's really interesting in that we talk about this a lot, but you made the comment before, like sometimes you just have to eat the chalk. And I don't disagree. There are slates where I think that dictates that. A lot of times when I look at those slates, it's because I'll give you an example. The Pistons the other night against the Wizards, right? That was one where I think that was a different kind of chalk in the sense that you had both Drummond and Blake out, and the chalk was this crazy value, Markieff and Wood and all these. Yeah. This feels different tonight with the Raptors. I think there's value to be had, but I don't look at these guys as like crazy underpriced where there's no path to failure.
No.
And it also, we'll talk in a second, but I mean, to me, like the Golden State New Orleans game, if this Raptors news didn't happen, this would be the game everybody would be going after. But now no one is. And the projections are not going to have it pop because everything's going to go to the games we just talked about.
Right. And those guys are priced up a little bit. I mean, the New Orleans guys are all fairly priced. They're not underpriced. I mean, it's a perfect late night hammer. I mean, I'm not someone who I know some guys feel like they need exposure to the late game. They panic when their players are done and there's still a big game going off. I don't think you have to force it, but I do think you can't ignore that game because they're both horrible defenses. Pelicans are pacing up the Warriors. I love D'Angelo Russell. Drew Holiday let me down there tonight, but great spot. Ingram's in a great spot. I mean, I don't think you ignore that game at all. I mean, I would be very nervous fading that game.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's funny. You can see my screen. I did the projections, and this was kind of the route that I was thinking this morning where, Joker is the guy that I want to kind of hang my hat on. I think you can go in this instance. I think it might be going overly GPP focused to pivot off Drummond to Jokic and then also pivot off of Toronto. So, you could argue if you want, and we'll just go back and do it because I think it is, I think it's the right way to think about it. But if we went in and said Drummond's my guy, right? And that's who I absolutely want. Well, then you go into New Orleans, Golden State, we build around that. It's interesting because you look at the projected scores, they're significantly lower, than what we were seeing when we did kind of the optimal builds, which is also why I think it supports why this stuff gets completely overlooked. But it's interesting, when you kind of look at how this plays out. But, I wanted to show you guys that because I think it's always helpful, to kind of see how these builds look. But,
yeah,
I don't.
If you get a minute, can you share my screen back again when you're done? I wanted to show one more thing. Cool.
Got it?
Yeah, man. So I wish I had done this more last night. Like I had a pretty good night last night. I kind of hung my hat on fading the 4 big studs. I mean, there was a number of paths last night to cashing with. Like I was nervous about all the value, and I didn't think a lot of it would come through, but yet Patty Mills and George Hill and a bunch of guys like made it viable. But I was like, I'm going to fade the top 4 in most of my lineups. So I was really focused on some like under-owned spots, like Dinwiddie and Allen was my number 1 correlation, and then like DeJounte Murray and LaMarcus Aldridge, and those 4 actually all went off in the same game stack for me and was really good. So what I'm going to show here is just the idea that let's just say you're locking in OG and Surge, which you don't even have to because they're going to pop up anyways. That's the thing about the optimizer. Like if you're just going to lock in the highest projected values, you don't even have to bother doing that. They're gonna populate anyways. But if let's just say Jamal Murray and Jokic is a duo, like I'm working my way there, Brian. I'm not all the way to 6-player game stacks, but I am trying my best here to embrace the idea of
the Raptors are going to force your hand tonight, buddy. You're going to have Drake in your team by the end of the night.
So let's just say you wanted a Murray Jokic stack with guaranteed those 2 Raptors, and now it's given me, Glenn Robinson, Galloway, and Drummond actually correlate. I mean, I did all these correlations today.
Do they really? I was wondering that.
It's not a strong one, but it's a positive one, and that's really all that matters. And then, okay, now it's got – here we go. There's our 4, and we got a Morant line. Morant and Sexton in the same line against each other, same game. I brought both those guys up.
Really well, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, what I would do if I was going to MME tonight, or even if I just wanted to mess around and get more ideas for what I would want to do, is just go in and keep running these pairs. Okay. Maybe it's going to be Beal in that game. You want to run Beal and Isaiah Thomas. I know you wrote those 2 guys up yesterday as having it's like a 0.46 or something really high. I may have to search them up here to find them, but if you wanted those 2 guys definitely coming back, or Bertans or whoever, to go in and I got my 2 Raptors. All right, I got my 2 Washington guys. I didn't unlock Murray. My bad. And then what does that give me? And so here we go. We got 2 Raptors. We got 2 Washington guys. We got Drummond again. We got Murray.
Murray out. Murray back in.
Yeah, but I mean, I think those little tiny pivots. I mean, you could have 6 chalky players in a lineup that as long as they're good chalk, and you have the 2 little pivots to the side that go 6-7x, all right? And if they're correlated and they go off together, especially, I think that's the path to taking something down tonight. So
you brought up the point before too, like you can kind of keep clicking around and playing around with this. One of the things that I do is I actually will bring this up, and if you're logged into your DraftManager account, what's really nice is if you have these guys locked, you can close your browser, walk away, go do whatever you need to do, right? You come back, say an hour before lock, and the projections are going to keep running in the background. So what you can kind of be doing is, periodically check back in and see how your core can look different depending on the news that breaks. I love doing that because I think, I am a single entry guy. I build my lineups by hand, although now with the help of an optimizer, which sounds weird. But
no,
I think the way that I look at this is sometimes it'll bring up combinations that I wouldn't have thought of just by looking, in whatever site you're playing on. Sometimes just having this and running it for 10 lineups, it doesn't mean you're exporting this and doing it as an MME build. I don't. But this, like last night, I went into the slate. I knew we didn't have a lot of value, right? And I kind of went into last night using it as an example where I said I wanted to game stack Milwaukee and the Lakers, and I needed to find a way to make it work. So I just set up my game stack and left one min price play and just put as 10 lineups, and it just gave me, all sorts of really awful options the entire day. And then it was like an hour before, then Bruno started popping up everywhere. And while he didn't do it a whole lot, it didn't hurt you.
He didn't kill you, no.
But like it gives you ideas. And then it was funny because I wasn't initially, like last night, I wasn't on DiVincenzo, and I know our boy Joe was all over. And so what I ended up doing was swapping out part of my game stack, putting Dante in as a lock, and then kind of rerunning it. And when you do that, you through this, you get to see just different paths. And I also think we talked about this morning in Slack with some of the guys, and one of the really good points, I know Tuck brought this up, was you kind of start your day looking at what an optimal build is, and then figure out where the spots are to pit. I mean, no matter how you've run this today, it's like Drummond, Raptors, Kemba, and like Langston Galloway.
Yeah, right.
No matter how many different ways you've run it, those guys are everywhere.
Right. So what I'm doing here while you're doing that is just, even if you're only building one lineup, like a cash lineup or whatever, let's just say you have the core four locked here, and it's giving you Galloway, and you don't like Galloway, you don't trust him, whatever, you think he's a bum. Then I just X them out and I regenerate. Okay. And now I got to a place where, look, instead of giving me all those value guys, it's giving me three more like mid-tier plays. I got Colin Sexton, I got Markieff Morris. You could argue that like he and those two guys and Robinson and maybe RHJ have a safer floor than a Galloway. I mean, some guys like to play those min-price guys in cash and, depending on their situations. And some people just would rather have a more balanced build. So, I think that's incredibly helpful, even if, like you said, you're not using it to generate the 100 lineups. You're just using it to continue to refine your process, rebuild, regenerate to where you get to the lineup that you want. And like you said, like, especially with multi-position eligibility on DraftKings, like FanDuel is one thing. You're like, hey, I got my 2-point guards. I got to go this guy. But on DK, like, it's hard to think, I can play RHJ a power forward, and then I can move Markieff to my forward slot. Like, that's the stuff where people, if you're not doing it with the help of the machine here, you're gonna
miss it.
Right, you're gonna miss the right combo of.
Well, like it's funny. I also think sometimes using this helps you dig into guys more than just like. I mean, if you ran the optimizer, and like I ran this morning, and for some reason it's like, Langston Galloway is the single greatest point per dollar value in the history of the sport, right? and like at first I sit there and go, okay, well, I get it, Pistons are banged up, and he's going to have to play some decent minutes. But like on the surface of it, I was sitting there thinking, well, wait, but Boston's not a bad defensive team by any means. So like, what are they seeing? So what it ended up taking me on was I went back and looked at the last game Kennard sat, and the last time he sat, it was actually that Svi Michel, whatever. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it.
Yeah, the other dude.
He started, but it was Galloway that played like 35 minutes off the bench. He had like 18 or 19 shots in that game.
Yeah.
What I liked about that is now he gets all the second team usage because Markieff is in the starting lineup. And so again, you could look at a punt guy and just say, okay, he's, you could look at the game log. He's been hitting value. There's plenty of easy ways to rationalize why he's a good play. But sometimes, like, I would have never spent more than 30 seconds digging into Langston Galloway at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Sure.
But this kind of made me think about, like, why is he popping so much? Because the matchup in theory wasn't one that should be that good.
Right. And that's something I think we do a great job at Draft Manager, and our subs know to like look beyond the no play exists in a vacuum. Like Langston Galloway at 3-3, like who cares? But is he coming off the bench? The kind of usage. Let's look at the game flows. Like when did he come in? What did he play? Did he close those minutes? Like there's so many, and I think different aspects to look at. When you and I were talking pre-show about how just the nature of DFS has forced people to consider really all the angles. And you don't want to overthink here or have paralysis by analysis, but you also, I mean, when you're putting your hard-earned money on the line, you want to make sure you vet some of these spots as much as you can from every angle. So,
yeah, this is a good slate, man. I'm pumped for this one because it's funny. These are the kind of slates where you sit back and you're like, if you just if you just listen around the industry, and I mean, we talk about this a lot in the Slack, and I know we used to talk about this before when it was just us kind of writing. I mean, we like looking around the industry. Like, what are other people talking about? What are they looking at? Because, I mean, the easiest path is what all the optimals are going to spit out today. But, taking 5 minutes to think about something differently, like you've got it up on the screen here, and I think it's a guy we haven't talked about, but Cantor, right? We talked a little bit about him today in the chat. I mean, that's a guy that the models probably aren't going to go nuts about today.
Yeah.
But again, like if you're you just start thinking about game script. It's like, all right, if Drummond's going to be on the other side and you want him and you've got Kemba already, right? Well, now I can't imagine a scenario where I think Tice is able to defend him. So now is Cantor in there and does he push? I mean, he's a point per minute monster, right? So do you get 25, 30 minutes of him and that becomes kind of a correlation piece that no one else will be using.
Yeah.
I like this is going through this, I think is really helpful. As we're running these different optimals, I mean, you're seeing a lot of the same names, which is fine. But it makes you think differently about like why some of the plays, might be coming up.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point on Cantor he came in against Embiid the other day and played a ton of minutes and a huge game. Like he's one of those guys, they need his size. And so if it's like a pace up spot and they're going to play small, like Tice is the guy, which I thought it was the other night against Dallas, and it was still ended up being Cantor. So,
yep.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of guys to play tonight. That's for sure.
That's
it won't surprise me if the winning lineups are 400 points or whatever, just because there's going to be a lot of good spots. But at the same time, man, you never know. Like we've seen slates like this before where maybe not necessarily the chalk bust, but it just underperforms, and then a couple other popular spots let down, and then the cash line isn't as high as you think it's going to be. So
what was it? 2 nights ago, when Cat was out, and it was like, now you had Dang, and you had all these cheap pieces that you could jam in all these guys.
Right.
And I think everyone went into that night thinking scores were going to be crazy, and they weren't. They
were low. Yeah.
They ended up being low because only maybe I think it was like. Was that the night Trae Young might have been the only guy who went over? I can't remember. Again, they start to blend together. But there was like only one guy that went over like 60. So it wasn't as crazy scoring as people thought.
Yeah, and then all the optimals gave everybody like 4 or 5 Timberwolves, and they stunk even in a really good matchup. So, I mean, that's a great point. Like, I don't think Toronto's quite the same situation. They're a better team, and they're also just like more reliable. Like Kyle Lowry and Ibaka, these guys are more reliable players than Jeff Teague and those guys. But the same point can be made. Like you don't know if Boucher is the minutes or RHJ. Like those guys are, they're not slam dunk plays that they appear to be. I love the Boucher guy. He's been a monster like per point per minute, but like they just don't love playing him. Especially, I can't imagine they're going to play him a ton if Washington's running Davis Bertans as their center, like, who's he match up with? Like, he's not going to chase Bertans around the 3-point line. No.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, that's where you can start to find ways of, and paths where you could potentially see this busting, right? Where all of a sudden, if I mean, to me, the 2 guys that I would say are the safest, it's probably Lowry and it's probably OG, right? I can't see paths where they don't play. I mean, unless you're playing the blowout angle, but if you're playing the blowout angle, then just stay away from the game entirely. Because there's it's not like you could argue play the blowout angle and play Boucher or whatever his name is, right? But he's going to be chalky, so it's not like he's sneaky even.
Right.
I mean, he makes sense because he in theory would get the run both ways, which I like, but he's not going to be sneaky.
I just don't think the Wizards, they even the shorthanded, they haven't been getting blown out, and Toronto not at full strength. I can't see them just blowing the doors off either. So I think it's a situation where the starters should get the minutes. Maybe figuring out which bench guy, like even what's his name, Terrence Davis is like a compelling play if Slate's out. Like
McCall, I saw McCall played a ton of minutes last game.
Right.
So he could be a guy. But I mean, there's so many good plays tonight that I feel like if you're gonna argue to stay away from this game, then just stay away from it. Either keep the chalk and get different elsewhere, or just pretend like this game doesn't exist and hope it busts.
Sure.
It's interesting. I'm just looking up like the latest Vegas lines and stuff. I mean, it sure seems like they're implying that Cat's going to sit because the Nuggets are double-digit favorites.
Yeah, I saw that.
I mean, because I was curious as to what the spread opened up for with this Toronto game. It's only 5.5 now, which is actually a little lower than I would have anticipated.
You're right.
You're right. They don't get blown out, and if they keep this game close, I mean, it's I think they're to me that stack the way you built it with the core makes so much sense because you're building a bunch of guys who are going to get you like 30 or 40, and you're doing that around Drummond with the expectation is he's the guy who gets you the 60, plus game. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, we'll have to see what news, like, I guess we're waiting on Towns news and we're waiting on like, what's the other big piece of news? I forget. We're so far into the slate now that it's like,
I forget too.
I mean, there's a couple other little situations here or there, but I mean, other than Towns and honestly, FVV.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, those are two pieces of news you really need, but like, it's not just like the slate's going totally sideways at clock tonight. I don't think, unless
the
NBA.
You just said it. You just jinxed it, buddy.
Just jinxed it.
Yeah. So I'm just looking. The guys we got to watch for. You got Towns. You got Van Fleet. You got Booker.
Right.
You got actually we didn't talk about this, but like Indiana. I think it was Lamb and one other guy.
Yeah, Lamb and Warren.
Or both.
Right.
Potentially not going to play. We already got the news on Blake and Kennard, and then you're waiting on Dragic, which you know how I feel about games versus the Knicks. They might as well not even pop up in my player pool because they don't exist in my life.
Well, that game is so slow. I did write up the fact that none has been good and that Hero's been good off the bench, but like if you're gonna play anybody, I just play Bam because like he has been awesome and like slow games against bad defense is big men. So I'm off Butler. I'm not really on that game at all to begin with. But like,
I was listening this morning to the RG guys, and Grant brought up an interesting point. And again, like sometimes I don't know, other sites might not like openly talk about other sites, but I think it's really important to use other free other free options that are out there to listen to what other people are saying. Because if you just listen, if you're a member of Draft Manager and you're just listening to me and to Dan, you're probably just playing Tim Hardaway Jr. and Domantas Sabonis all the time.
Yeah, right.
So, you have to listen to other voices.
And Dinwiddie.
Yeah, and Spencer Dinwiddie, that's your boy. So, I mean, he brought up an interesting point that he said he saw this in the recent game logs that Bam has played every minute of the fourth quarter for I think it was 4 straight or 5 straight games, which is interesting because if you're going to look at the game logs, you're going to try to extrapolate that into his production tonight. But yet, is this game really going to stay close? And now, do you worry that he really gets that fourth quarter run, which is really where he's been getting the most? It was interesting. I hadn't, that's the kind of stuff
That's the next level stuff, man. I mean, I was just looking at his game log when I was writing him up, and he's been over almost 50 points or over in 6 out of his last 7. Like I kind of forgot just how awesome he's been. He correlates better with the rest of their starting 5 than Butler does. Like he's basically running point center. His assists are up. Like I'm a Bam guy. I mean, I love Bam. He's a little expensive, and like you said, if it was a different slate and we didn't have all these other spots, like if it wasn't a Jokic and you would look harder at him. But for the same reason, is he going to be like 5%? Probably. So I got no problems playing Bam, but like he's probably not a priority, like you said.
No. So I think we're good, man. I think that
was great.
We've beaten this one up here, and hopefully this was helpful for you guys watching. This is something we'll make sure now we'll pop back into Slack throughout the afternoon, heading up to Lock and talk about this. We've got, just so you guys know too, obviously this was an NBA show, but our EPL picks and articles are up for the weekend. So our boy Vince has got that going. We've got 2 football slates this weekend, which I'm not an NFL. I love playing NFL DFS. I don't like researching it. I just do it for fun where I can drink beer and usually just stack the Jets and then get
Wow. Try.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to do that anyway as a Jet fan, but why not?
Steelers, baby. That's a terrible towel behind me. You got to watch out this week.
This is
stacking up the Jets.
Le'Veon revenge, baby. But, make sure you guys are going in there and checking it out. make sure if you're watching us today and trying to get an idea of what we're doing, go check out Dan's article. It is free today. It is a monster.
I went hard today because I wanted everybody to see just the kind of different levels of analysis that we offer. And I mean, I'm just going to make my plug real quick. Like, I think, we have something really special going on here. And I think everyone that's joined us so far has been really excited about what we're doing. And our Slack has been just awesome lately with people making positive contributions and feeling like they're learning a lot about the process. And, I think we're doing a great job. And it sounds like a brag, but I mean, things couldn't have been going any better since we launched. Then
absolutely not. It's been awesome.
It's been a great experience on our end, and we just want people to come and hang out with us and play fantasy sports. So
that's the dream, baby.
All right, Brian. Good luck tonight, man.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk later, and let's hope we don't have to tilt too many Raptors tonight.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
We the North.
Happy holidays, guys. Take care.
See you guys.
See you.
Peace.